colleague Christina is just arriving, and I can take over to her for introducing the session, actually. So please, Christina, go ahead.
Sorry, I had some eventually some microphone issues just at the very last moment. But hello, thank you, Daniel. Hello and welcome to everybody. My name is Cristina Garzillo, and I work at ICLE Europe. And I'm chairing this session together with, as you noticed, with Daniel Lukerat from the Fraunhofer Institute. Before introducing this very distinguished group of panelists that you see here, I'm making one or two opening remarks myself. So the title of this session is Reinventing Heritage for Sustainable Urban Regeneration. The word heritage sometimes can carry a negative connotation, which frankly cannot be justified. And people dealing with heritage are those known for creating obstacles, those who say, I'm sorry, this project cannot proceed in its current form. But heritage is hugely important to mankind, and I believe even more in this complex world of today. And we have seen it in the pandemic crisis. Culture and cultural heritage is what is keeping people alive. Their emotional sanity, it has often been said. Our panelists today are policymakers, and Daniel will introduce them in a minute. Local authorities have the obligation to protect their heritage from threats. But at the same time, there are increasing expectations that heritage should contribute to the contemporary society. So well-being, social inclusion, peace, poverty alleviation, sustainable development. Therefore, the cultural departments of cities must avoid isolation and concern themselves with issues that go beyond the heritage. Reinventing heritage needs improved planning, needs interrelations. And cities have indeed various degrees of autonomy and can apply for labels, for funds, programs that are put in place by national governments, international organizations. But who gets involved in the policies? How can cultural heritage be used to educate if, for example, schools are not involved? How to provide access if the mobility department is not involved? How to manage tourism if the mayor's office is not involved? Apart from public actors, also private and civil society actors are playing a very strong role. And today, and we will see this, there is a closer focus on what the community feels is their heritage. So there are increasing democratization of the heritage. During the third European Conference of Cities and Towns in Hanover, that was year 2000, I was moderating a roundtable with Luigi Fusco-Girard on Local Agenda 21 for culture, integrating culture and sustainable development. And participants at that time were 3. And maybe one was just led by curiosity. So culture has cross-cutting issue in sustainable development was clearly not yet recognized. And I hope today is different. We are at the 9th European Conference of Cities and Towns. And we will see during the session how cultural heritage has perceived as a factor for collaborative processes to regenerate cities through a new sense of belonging and social cohesion. We will see also how cultural heritage, whether tangible or intangible, is central to what makes cities attractive, creative, and sustainable. This is the reason why we will need to increase the resilience of cultural heritage and historic areas, and at the same time consider cultural heritage and historic areas as key enablers of resilience. They have the potential to contribute to the resilience of the people and the society as a whole. So this session features excellent projects on cultural heritage from around Europe. And cities presenting are involved in alphabetical order in the Horizon 2020 ARC, Click, Open Heritage, and ROC. And ROC will be the first one to end and will have its final conference at the end of the month. So how are we going to spend this 1.5 hours? I leave now to Daniel to explain.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, everybody, how we will do this? We will have 4 presentations by our cities. We will first have a presentation by Hamburg, then by Turin, then by Rijeka, and then by Sunderland, followed by a quick Q&A session. Then we will have some reflections in the presentation by Sandra and Keith Dulich from the EU partnership. And this will then also end with another Q&A session. And with regards to the Q&A session, 2 housekeeping rules or free. You are already aware that the session will be recorded. If you have any questions, use the chat, especially for technical questions. And if you have questions for our speakers, and for later, use the Q&A session or the Q&A option. Yeah, and I think with that, let's start with our first presentation by the city of Hamburg, which is Bernd Paulowitz, the World Heritage Coordinator, who will tell us a bit about what they are doing there. Please, Bernd.
Hello, thank you, Daniel, and thank you for the opportunity to speak a little bit. Oh, and there's already a drawing on my presentation. I just want to talk a little bit about the city of Hamburg and what we're doing in this ARC project and what our main concerns are in cultural heritage management and with climate change effects. So the first thing to know about Hamburg, just to situate a little bit the site. So Hamburg was a port, and there is this, which now is black circled, which was a 19th century historicism area built, which was the core area of the historic port, and which became obsolete in 1956 with, so not war or anything, but with the freight container shipping. And this changed, of course, completely the use. So the warehouses were not used anymore, and this is the same in Liverpool, Bordeaux, or other harbor cities for storaging anymore. And these buildings are, of course, quite large. You can see a little, I hope you can see that, but I will have other pictures. Well, behind me there are as well. So on these buildings, and it changed its use, and it became a World Heritage Site, which is this white encircled area. And the use that it mainly has, or has a lot today, is a cultural heritage hub for cultural activities, which you see in the front down on the picture. You see the Elbphilharmonie, but there is as well the biggest single tourism site in Germany, which is a modellism, so a train modellism site, which will have soon 10,000 square meters, and there are nearly 2 million paying visitors per year. So that's quite an enormous site. So there are tourists and everything, but of course we have large challenges as well in this World Heritage Site, and these are mainly because of the tidal and of the sea. It's the storm surges, inland flooding, and heavy rainfall and heat waves. You see on this picture, you see actually the flooding from 1962, which flooded most of the port, and the heritage site is at the top of this flooded dark green area. So it was a flooding that even went into the city. And so we have in the past had a management plan that was very much oriented on the cultural heritage issues, and we had a research question within this ARC European project of how to better understand, measure, integrate the different hazards and effects of climate change in cultural heritage management to increase the protection and resilience of the area. So I will give then several examples on how we're doing this. And actually the final question is anyway, may climate change be there a driving factor in the sustainable management of cultural heritage? And I think for Hamburg, we can answer with this project of ARC this as a little bit of a yes already. So how we are doing this in Hamburg, there are two First, it's of course a research question, establishing baseline data, but then we have two main levels, which is on a policy level, which is integrating of climate change and hazard as an integral part within the revision of the management plan and periodic reporting of the World Heritage in the years to come, and identifying the different plans of the city has already in respect and outlining the procedures that should be reflected in this management of the cultural heritage. Why is this actually the case? Because the current management of the heritage plan was established by the Heritage Preservation Department and the Town Development Department, and it does not fully integrate climate change, vulnerability, social change factors in this plan. So what we're trying to do is, for the next revision of this management plan, to integrate these factors. And how we're going to do this. So we have a second level within the ARC project, which is a very detail-oriented procedure. So it's how to actually we want to make a best practice or good practice model processes that we can then repeat for the rest of the heritage site. So 2 to 4 model projects, ideally with 3D modeling, and this is following the BIM digitalization strategy of the city of Hamburg. And this is now I think the example that does not move that I will give. So there is actually a global and European-wide building information modeling campaign that comes from a construction side. So building information modeling is in essence a digital model of a building structure that is data enriched. So what we're having here is that all information like plans, changes, impacts, are object-based, available to all partners at all time and during the whole life of the project. So when it's planned, so not only for the historic buildings that are protected and I have behind me, but also for the modern buildings. And this is quite new within the building information modeling, actually, because up to now, climate change and things like this are not, in particular cultural heritage, are not regarded because they come from a construction, from an architectural point of view, and they have not regarded within this building information modeling the cultural heritage management. And this is what we are trying to do. So we are trying to develop strategies to better protect the building structures and to monitor climate change impacts on cultural heritage sites so they become more visible and more manageable for the other partners in the city that manage these sites. This is already through actually. But just to show an example what is happening, for example, due to the climate change, we have tidal changes, and you see on the left-hand side of the picture, you see the quay walls that have actually collapsed within the waterfront, and they go, I'm not sure that it's very visible, but they go actually up to the buildings. So the whole the flooding swaps away also the area behind the quay walls. And what they have done in the past is, with the second picture, is a reconstruction of the quay walls as such, but we have no policy on predicting that or on looking at the structure. Is it vulnerable or not? And we're hoping to integrate all the quay walls, the bridges, and the buildings in a digital model in order to be able to monitor the deterioration by climate change. So integrate the climate change adaptation into the management of the World Heritage Site, and including the improved monitoring of the impact and increased community awareness, which is the last objective of the ARC project. So thank you.
Thank you, Bernd. Very, very interesting, and also how you pull different things from the different departments you have in the city, the digitalization, the community engagement in there. Yeah, maybe Sandra, you have a quick reflection on what Bernd.
Yeah, the major things to highlight here is how the climate change actually has been used as a driving force to create more and better sustainable management of cultural heritage. This is something that it appears clearly. And then this also factor that the idea to take from different sources all the data information available in order to create a modeling, an integrated modeling, and therefore a more manageable way to deal with the cultural heritage sites, and also to create a policy out of that, and a monitoring system as well. So I would say that these are the key topics out of this practice.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Bernd. Then I think now I would like to introduce to Erika Albarello. She is project manager at the city of Turin in Italy. She's going to speak about how the city of Turin has rediscovered and redefined a new identity via cultural heritage. So, hello, Erika. How did this
Hello.
happen?
Hello. Can you hear me well? Good. So, well, first of all, thanks to the organizers of this conference, City of Mannheim and Italy, for inviting me here to this panel. Well, I guess I was invited here because Torino in the last 3 years or so has been involved in the ROC project that Christina mentioned, which is Regeneration and Optimization of Cultural Heritage in Creative and Knowledge Cities. Torino was a role model city in that project. Well, of course, being a role model city is quite a responsibility, and we have to admit that we had actually much more to learn than to teach along the process. Anyway, I would like to share with you a little bit why we were chosen among many European cities as one of the role models when talking about urban regeneration and valorization of cultural heritage. Well, let me start from showing you a picture. Well, okay, what can you see from this picture? It is actually easy. It's a car park. This is one of the main squares in Torino, Piazza San Carlo, and these were the 60s. But the situation was like this until the late 90s. And this is Piazza San Carlo today, a very nice square, pedestrian, where people go, hang around, just relax and enjoy really a very nice architecture. Well, this we can all recognize it was a positive change, but how did it happen? It happened through actually a dramatic episode, I would say. The city of Torino in these years was really a one-company town. All the private lives and public life revolved around the Fiat factory. And then what happened? Well, a very dramatic economic and industrial crisis came in the 80s, and a lot of factories shut down. The factories were actually on the urban land. A lot of people lost their jobs. So we can say that we had, in a way, two kind of shocks. A physical shock, because just talking about industrial land, 10 million square meters of land were left empty. Talking about population, from 1.2 million people, we are now less than 900,000. And we also had, I would say, a cultural shock in terms of identity. The city completely lost its identity, could not see anymore what was its, let's say, its vocation. So what happened to arrive here? The local administration very wisely decided to have a participatory strategic planning process, not to reinvent a new identity for the city, but to go and see what was really there. Yes, cultural heritage in terms of physical heritage, of tangible heritage, so this Baroque square that you see, but also in terms of city vocations. And it was decided that we had to focus on two main aspects to become again a city with really a goal. It was decided that we had to bet on, of course, on urban regeneration in terms of city center, and large investments from the national governments and from Europe happened and you can see one of the results, but also in the neighborhoods. Very important urban regeneration programs happened in the neighborhoods. I would only mention the Case del Quartiere, which are community centers that were born in those times after the crisis, but they are more than ever active today, where really a community center is needed. And then it was decided that Torino had to be put on the map. Nobody knew the city, if not for the Fiat or maybe Juventus, but Torino had to become an international city. How this? Well, through large-scale events. Maybe some of you may remember the 2006 Winter Olympics. And these two main focuses that the strategic planning process of the city really addressed give me the opportunity to talk to you about a couple of actions that we decided to develop within the ROC project, because those are still the focuses of the city. And we decided to do a couple of actions. One is actually addressed to these large-scale events. We decided to take advantage of the new technologies, of the innovation, to monitor these large-scale events, because we know, all the tourist cities know that the impact of tourism, of visitors, can be very, very, really not only positive for the local communities. We put some sensors in the city to monitor some data, which is how these temporary large-scale events impacted the permanent heritage of the city, meaning if tourists coming for an event also are attracted by the permanent heritage of the city. We use this data to better, let's say, plan services for safety purposes, which is something very, very important also nowadays, to see how the crowds flow. But I will not tell you about the numbers that we monitored, which is something very, very specific. And let me take this opportunity to say, as Christina mentioned, that we will have the ROC Open Knowledge Week at the end of the month. So I invite you all to join. But I will tell you that taking advantage of these technologies, having the possibility to test them in the city, was an opportunity for the services of the city, for the culture department, for the technical departments, urban planning, and so on and so forth, to plan the cultural policies in a different way, taking advantage of real data, by having a clear picture of what is actually happening in the city when you have these large-scale events. Another important experimentation or research analysis that we developed within ROC was to look for or make an analysis about the heritage of the city, the properties of the city of Torino. And I'm not talking about the monuments or these nice squares that I'm showing you. The public administration is the owner of a lot of spaces, even small spaces or even gardens, parks, but it has not anymore the resources to take care of them. As we know, this is not anymore the season for large-scale investments, but this heritage cannot remain, vacant. As I mentioned to you, we have this large heritage of forming industrial land, and we have noticed that along the years, especially, for example, in private areas, many actions growing from the bottom developed reusing this space, even in a temporary way, for the sake of the community, because these actions were led by activists, by organizations, by local people. And the city actually, in the years, had to acknowledge this process. It was not quick, it was not an easy process, but in the end, in 2016, the city of Torino approved a common goods regulation that in a way recognized that these actions, these bottom-up actions happen and are beneficial to the communities, so the city should support it. It means that the city can make pacts of collaboration with single or groups of formal or non-formal groups of citizens to take care of these properties which are public. The mapping, the data collection we had through ROC is intended to give new data and find new places to give to this common goods regulation, to give to the local communities to care for. Let me just mention that we are very proud to notice that these two actions that we developed in ROC actually meet the actions that have been identified by the Partnership on Cultural and Cultural Heritage the Urban Agenda. Well, I would like just to sum up and close my intervention by sharing with you some lessons we learned in this process. And well, I would say that the best way to preserve the heritage that we have in the city, again, I'm not saying only the architecture and historical heritage, is to take care of it. And take care of it means that, I mean, happens often first from the communities that express their sense of belonging, their identity, their sense of place by caring for the public goods, and therefore there should be involved in the urban transformation processes. We have seen that practices often precede policies in these urban regeneration processes in local development. That's why the local administration should recognize it. It doesn't mean that the local administration should give up responsibility, but it should take up this innovation in its decision-making processes and in its policies. Let me really conclude with a reflection that comes out from the experience that we all had in these last months of pandemic emergency, that today really public space is the new heritage that we should take care of. Okay, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer any question you might have.
Thank you, Erika. Yes, I see that there are some questions coming up, but we decided for the moment to keep the questions after this first round of introductions. And I think just a very quick comment that this is really a remarkable example also of community-led initiatives. But as you were also saying, what struck me was that sentence, practices precede policies. And I think that, yes, even that there is this creativity and willingness coming from the bottom, how are these initiatives linked to the official processes of run by the local government and also by other organizations? How is this linkage working? And this, as you were saying, may be also very lengthy and quite frustrating. A comment that comes now quite spontaneously. Sandra, what do you think? We can't hear you, Sandra.
Why?
Now, yes. Thank you.
Now,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, this is the key question actually, because Turin, the important fact of Turin, and since the 90s, they create this process with one common direction, constant direction, working with these processes, bottom-up processes. And they arrive now to these even these local regulations on common goods. So to create a sort of a procedural approach in order for them to be able to work with the local communities and to reinvent the heritage. And another factor for Turin is so the public leverage is it's key. And the other important factor is that they transform their own financial crisis with the Fiat, the one industry crisis. They transform the city, trying always not to create gentrification. So this was the main issue since the late 80s, 90s. They try to rehabilitate the places without moving the poor to the other areas. So Turin is a good example for that, and they arrived to this local regulation that actually now is worthwhile being studying and creating maybe a modeling for other cities to reproduce.
Very good. Then let's move on to our next speaker. who is Susanna Milosevic from the city of Rijeka, who is senior advisor to the mayor and specialist for European projects, who will tell us a bit about the new cultural districts in Rijeka. Please, Susanna.
Well, thank you. And I will have a small, short presentation about our new cultural district and especially about one building in that new cultural district. So what about Rijeka? We are the city in the northern part of Adriatic Sea with 128,000 inhabitants. And of course, we are part of the widely known, let's say, transition from industrial city towards new identity, let's say, like that. And as you can see, we are also European Capital of Culture for this year, of course, hugely affected by the new normal situation in the whole world. What about new cultural district? As I said, we were industrial city, and now we have a lot of ex-industrial sites, and we are looking for new purposes for that sites. And of course, we have whole new cultural district. It's of course connected with the European Capital of Culture, but also with the city urban regeneration. So we'll have the whole district with the new functions, cultural functions. Between all the buildings, this one is quite interesting because of the multitasking that will take place in this building, and with the main aim that we want that building to become a house or children's house. Now we are almost finished with the works. We are expecting an opening in the next few months. It will be a huge space and funded by EU funds and city funds. And interesting thing is that quite a lot of institutions will be managing and will find their place in this new building. We are talking about, we will have a cinema there and the children's library and the City Puppet Theater, and also one association, Benčić Youth Council, will also be situated there. And the interesting thing is how we are trying to find synergies between let's say works and content for the new refurbished buildings. Well, for example, in the CLIck project that is funded through Horizon 2020 program, we opted for open call, and in this call we asked children what are they expecting from their new house, let's say, and we got some really rather interesting answers on that in different media. So and it's main because in next few months we will have a lot of new spaces, but to find the content for the new spaces when you are quite a small city is a big question, and that's really an issue. And we are trying to combine all the possible, let's say, fundings and projects to find the answers and solutions for that problem. And to finish with the fact that once again that we are European capital of culture, but due to the COVID-19, we will have an extension to the next year, and we are looking for the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. That was a very interesting presentation. I specifically like the inclusion of the youth in the decision-making process, and therefore giving them the opportunity to shape the heritage you have in the city. That's I like very much. Sonia, what do you think?
Actually, the key question posed by Susanna was it's key to a lot of small and medium-sized cities. So they have big ancient properties, but the question is which are the functions to make these buildings alive again? And in this case, the Rijeka decided to go through a process of communication with the communities and even children to ask for functions. And this is a great challenge for our local administrations to really ask which are the functions to create an alive buildings and area again. And then the other key actual is I can hear my echo. Do you? Yeah, there is an echo. Sorry, but the other is actually the sustainable financial modeling. So whenever there is these functions, then you have to create also this collaboration means also to have engagement of local communities or NGOs or associations or private sectors in order to be to create the environment to really be able to rehabilitate these buildings again in an alive way, I would say. So very good.
Okay, so thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Sandra. And I think this is now a perfect bridge to our last speaker. That is Mark Taylor, Principal Conservation Officer at Sunderland City Council in UK. And this is the story about a street in Sunderland, and specifically 3 buildings that, despite their heritage value, lacked maintenance, care and repair for some time. But then what happened? Mark.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Once again, I'd like to thank the organisers for inviting me to speak today. And I was asked to come and speak because of my involvement from a local authority perspective in the Open Heritage Project at 170 to 175 High Street West. But that project is actually a key project within the wider regeneration scheme that we have in Sunderland. It's called the Heritage Action Zone. So I would firstly like to say a few words about the Heritage Action Zone. Just to give it a little bit of context, Sunderland is a city by the sea in the northeast of England, and its history is steeped in industry and manufacturing, particularly shipbuilding and coal mining. But it has had to go through a period of transformation since the decline of those industries, and now it's the subject of a great amount of regeneration activity, of which heritage is a big part. Our Heritage Action Zone is called Sunderland Historic High Streets Heritage Action Zone, and it aims to revive Sunderland's historic high street through heritage-inspired regeneration and placemaking that delivers sustainable economic growth. And if I can just show you the map of our Heritage Action Zone in the next slide. Okay, that doesn't seem to want to move on to the next slide for some reason. Yes, so there it is. So this is a user-friendly map of our Heritage Action Zone area, which is part of our leaflet. And I'm going to attempt to draw on our historic high streets. Okay, so this is High Street East, High Street West, and coming into Forces Street. So that's the focus of our Heritage Action Zone. And our 3 main conservation adaptive reuse projects. So we have 170 to 175 High Street West here, which is the subject of the Open Heritage Project. We have Holy Trinity Church over here, and we have Mackie's Corner here. And they are all strategically positioned throughout the HAZ. So HAZ is short for our Heritage Action Zone. Sorry about that. So move on to the next slide. Again, it's a bit slow, and I don't know why that's happening. Yeah, so we have a range of over 30 projects and activity across our HAs, falling under generally the themes that you can see listed. But really, the HAs is built around the three conservation and adaptive reuse projects that I mentioned. So you have Holy Trinity Church on the left-hand, top left here. You have Mackey's Corner, top right, and of course 170, 175 High Street West down the bottom here. And all of these projects include sort of feasibility work, restoration and reuse works, community engagement, heritage skills training is built into all the projects, and a whole range of promotional events, particularly cultural events. Both Mackey's Corner and 170, 175 the restoration works are being funded through a grant scheme that we've set up as part of our HAS. And both those projects are now on site and will be completed shortly. But in advance of those works, through our partnership team, working with Sunderland Culture and Newcastle University, through the Open Heritage Project, various cultural activities have been delivered to activate the ground floors of these properties in advance of the works. So there's been meanwhile temporary uses, artists' commissions, workshops, and so forth. So I think through all our three main projects, culture and creativity is embedded into the heritage. And I think this is because there was a natural synergy between heritage and culture and creativity. They gravitate towards each other. And we've seen that throughout our HAS projects. And the best example of this is the Open Heritage Project at 170 to 175. So I'll just move on to the next slide. Again, it's a bit slow in opening. So yes, this project very much started off as a sort of top-down approach. So that the council and our main partners in the Heritage Action Zone, Historic England, identified as a priority for action. Unfortunately, we had a very difficult owner who didn't want to do anything with the buildings, and he just left them to rack and ruin. They had been set on fire on a couple of occasions, and we really thought that we would lose the buildings. They were based on the verge of falling down. So as a local authority, there was 3 key actions that we took over 2017-19 to help unlock the potential of this project. The first was obviously being successful with our application for a Heritage Action Zone and having the project identified as a strategic priority within this wider regeneration project. And that really opened the door to a range of funding opportunities for the project. The second action was that we acquired the properties from the owner. And this was really difficult because he did not want to sell, and we had to go down the route of threatening compulsory purchase. And that then persuaded him to sell us the properties by agreement, which we then passed over to the Tyningale Building Preservation Trust, who then took the project forward. Our third key action was to set up the HAS Partnership Grant Scheme, which provided the main funding for the restoration works for the project. Another key action was by Tyningale Building Preservation Trust, who agreed to take on the properties and drive the project forward. And they linked up with PopRex, a local community organisation who run a coffee shop and record store in the city. And they really saw this group of properties as their new home. And that is when the project really became more of a grassroots bottomed-up project. And it attracted other partners and funders. So, for example, Newcastle University through the Open Heritage Project. We had Sunderland College, which delivered the Living Classroom project with apprentices there. We have Remake Culture, who are delivering a Young Musicians project every Saturday morning, or they did in advance of work starting on site. And if I can just refer to the top photograph, so this is the ground floor at number 170, and this is the space being set up for one of our Heritage Open Days events. That was put on by, or organised by the Open Heritage Project, together with Sunderland Culture, one of our partners in the Heritage Action Zone, and together with the Heritage Action Zone and PopRex. And this, you can't really say too well in the photograph, but this is sort of an artist's exhibition on the rebel women of Sunderland, so celebrating important women in Sunderland. A more recent activity you see in the bottom right-hand picture. So this is the rear boundary wall to the properties, and this is a mural which has been painted by young people with mental health issues as part of mental health awareness campaign. So again, it's I think the project is very much bringing the community with it and integrating culture and creativity throughout the project. So there's two aspects to it. There is the capital conservation, adaptive reuse works, but there's also all this cultural activity which is occurring, you know, in advance of the restoration and also whilst they're ongoing. But ultimately, once the restoration works are complete, the building will be converted for use for creative uses. So there'll be a music venue in the middle property, and there'll be hopefully pockets will move their coffee shop and record store into the ground floor of another one of the properties, and then there'll be spaces available for artists and other creatives from that sector. So that's 170, 175. I just want to finish off by saying a few words about another project that we have in our Heritage Action Zone. And this is quite a unique project. This is what we call a communities research project. And this is a pilot project from Historic England. It's the first one in England, which is exploring the links between heritage and wellbeing. And we have a consultant, ERS, committed to assessing the qualitative impact of the HAS projects on the local community. And it's really focused on the residents of 3 tower blocks and pupils of local primary school, Hudson Road Primary School. Now, it's very much in its early stages and it's been held back because of COVID-19, but the consultants have delivered with the local school an education programme, and you'll see from the photograph on the slide that one of these activities for education programme was a heritage walk, and this was a display prepared by the pupils of the school fair assembly, and they're only aged 7 or 8, and they really embraced the project and they really embraced the heritage of the area. And I think it's an example of how you know the heritage can give local community a sense of place and belonging. And I just want to finish off by reading a quote from one of the pupils, not the quote that I've got on this slide there, but another one. So this is a pupil who in year 7 who was in year 3 who was 7 or 8 years old, and this pupil said that we were exploring the old historic HAS buildings in Sunderland. I love Mackie's Corner because it is remade by the builders, so it looks brand new again, thanks to HAS. And I just think that it sort of sums up the impact that our wider HAS Regeneration programme can have in the local community. So that's me. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, very interesting presentation. I think also here I can see one aspect that is the fact that these buildings, once they are in use, they are really like a trigger for a kind of wider regeneration. So a new regeneration potential for the area. Another thing that I clearly see is this governance. So many actors that have been involved, and the trust and Sunderland Culture and the Progress and the Newcastle University. So the governance aspects, and also the quantity of activities that have taken place, all the artistic works, and also the idea of the Rebel Woman in Sunderland, the interactive classes, and also this could maybe justify the transformation from the temporary use to something more fixed. Yeah, this is from my side. Sandra, would you have any other reflection?
Actually, these are also my points. The governance here, so all these actors from different sectors involved, and actually this kind of engagement, also how this engagement create the opportunity to, how do you say, to overcome the bureaucracy. So also these bureaucratic procedures or the problems of selling the buildings, or all these things that usually prevents creative people from get along the process and go to the point. In this case, they succeed in creating the environment where actually they manage to have this rehabilitation, which is also something that along the process, thanks to the how they did it, they actually managed to create the sense of well-being of the area and the sense of community. From the presentation, it's clear that here the process goes beyond the rehabilitation of one building to create an activity, an economic activity. Is something more here. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry for that loss. Let's go to the first Q&A section now. We have quite a few questions already received, but if you have more questions, please use the Q&A section. As a first starter, maybe we can use a question that is open for everyone. And there was one comment by one questionnaire that mentioned that the focus seems very much to be on tangible cultural heritage. But that for sustainable regeneration, also the intangible cultural heritage is important, and whether or not or how you have included intangible cultural heritage in the work. So if anybody wants to start, please feel free.
Well, I'm happy to start, as Hamburg was first in the presentation. I think for me, maybe that's a misunderstanding from the presentation of what we're doing coming from a heritage preservation department, but the intangible and tangible heritage are have the same importance. So the story that is told within the warehouse district or the office district that is the World Heritage Site have the same importance as the buildings in terms of the World Heritage Convention, because the way it's defined, the heritage protection is defined, both of them are important. So to have the system, the material is important, but also to have the stories that are told with it. So that, for example, in the warehouse district, we avoid to have housing, because housing will be against the original use of the building. So we have more use. We try to sponsor or encourage use that's closer to the original use of the warehouse district. That's of course lost because the harbor moved away, but we try to have a similar use and not to transform it in lofts or housing or something like that. So that the story we tell with the heritage site stays important. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernd. Any other comments or answers to the question?
Hi, Dan. Yes, I have one comment to make.
Please.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me? Hi. I think one thing we've learned through our Heritage Action Zone is how important it is not just to focus on the buildings, but also on the intangible aspects of heritage. We have in the past delivered a number of heritage-led regeneration schemes, which was basically just a collection of restoration schemes for historic buildings, but it didn't really involve the local community. And I don't think we thought too much about the intangible aspects of the heritage, but through our Heritage Action Zone, because we now have such a range of projects in capacity building and community engagement and promotion events and activities is such an important part that runs throughout our project. We've seen the benefit of actually bringing both aspects of heritage together as part of a wider regeneration initiative, and we think that works very well.
Thank you.
Maybe, sorry, also the Rebel Woman Sunderland could be considered as a kind of intangible way of bringing the culture, so from the community. I would read it also in this way.
Do you have further comments? And maybe the last part is also a good segue to the next question, which is specific for Mark. And the question would be, to what extent is the voice of those children representative for all of the citizens? Because there might be other voices that are not important voices that are not considered?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I have to admit, I'm not personally particularly closely involved in that particular the communities research project. But what I am aware of is that the two aspects, or the two target audiences that it's targeting, the local residents and the primary school. And so in respect to the local residents, they've targeted 3 tower blocks of apartments. They did a questionnaire which was posted through the doors of all 200 residents. Now, they only had 19 replies. So in all of those 19 replies, everybody was gave a sense of that the heritage of the area does give them a sense of belonging. But I think it needs to be taken account that there was only 19 replies out of 200 residents. So that may be reflective of there may not be a general interest of the heritage in that area, and that's among the local community. And I think that's maybe because it's a very deprived area, and the heritage is quite segregated. It's not obviously an historic area because the heritage buildings are very spread out, and with it being a deprived area, that the local community has a lot of social problems. So I suspect heritage is not high on their agenda on their day-to-day lives. In respect of the school, again, many of the children in the school come from very difficult backgrounds. There's a high level of deprivation and social problems in the area, sort of alcohol and drug-related problems. But what's been pleasing to me is seeing how well the children have embraced the Heritage Project, and I think that sort of signifies that, with some education and with some consultation and engagement, Heritage could become a bigger part of the local community's lives and could contribute towards their well-being.
Thank you, Mark. That is a perfect segue to the next question, actually, which is on the gentrification and what's the importance of regenerative practices that offer a wider array of job opportunities outside of the creative and knowledge economy. So more specifically, the question is, what chances do you see in restoring production and light industrial activity to provide opportunities for working class citizens and reintroduce craftsmanship into the cities?
Maybe I should try this one. Well, actually, in Torino, the fact that the city had this transition from industrial to city of services, or a cultural city, maybe it takes us back from thinking actually of light industrial, of restoring light industrial activities. But I would say that instead the city is very much betting on startups, so on innovative new enterprises by making partnerships with the universities, with the research centers. Some of the regeneration projects that we had actually aim at setting up locally, I'm not saying only in the city center, but in the neighborhoods, some centers, job centers, which do not only address people up to work, but also innovative people trying to attract really these new activities. Of course, crafts are important, but in our case are a little bit connected with culture and creativity. And this links me also to how to avoid gentrification. This is very hard when you start putting like startups in a neighborhood which had another identity. So this process has to be really carefully, explained to the local communities, and the centers must offer also services, basic services, which are available to the communities, starting from services for kids after school, or really aggregation for women or other things. So multifunction is key, in my opinion.
Okay, any other comments on that regard? Avoiding gentrification? Any policy instruments to use that? That was another question. If you can elaborate. Yeah, Sandra, please.
This to avoid gentrification is one of the million-dollar question. But actually, from my observatory, I'm not a city, but a governmental level. What I can see that you cannot avoid it in one day. I mean, in 1 year, not even. So Torino succeed in a way because the public leverage stays on this kind of policy really for decades. It's something that you really want to do, and maybe you succeed, but it's something that you really have to have in mind being a public authority. This is something. And then, of course, the other factor that I noticed from my observatory is that whenever the material you deal with, the area, is an historical one, and it's a central one, then of course it's easier for the public authority to find the fundings to create rehabilitation processes. But and therefore you may have this opportunity, like the city center of Genova, Torino. You have this opportunity to start working with the population and creating, of course, services, but also engaging them. And this is something to create trust with the public leverage, create trust also with the local community, but with the public sector, the private sector. So if you start working on an area and you keep on working on that area, then you create the public leverage, the trust for other source, private or communities or whatever, to really be engaged, happily engaged, because the engagement is also, I mean, a heavy process for all sizes. So this is from my observatory what I saw until now.
Thank you, Sandra. Any other comments on the gentrification part? Otherwise, we have one more general question and two specific questions for Bernd and Mark. I would say then we would go to the more general question now, and then to try to have a more open discussion. And the more general question would be, what's the link between cultural heritage and resilience? Because right now the building resilience is mostly very site-specific, but the heritage sites are usually part of a larger socio-ecological system, so the city as a whole. And here the question was, if any of you can comment on this tension, on is it addressed in your work or not? So how the very place-based look at the heritage sites and the resilience thinking in the larger urban area part is addressed.
Well, can I try? Well, it's of course. We started with intangible and tangible heritage. Even if tangible heritage is, let's say, sometimes harder because it's really money consuming to rebuild something, but it's easy part of the process, because now or there you will find some money. But intangible heritage means engagement, as Sandra at the end. And engagement is much harder process than the getting money. And we are all facing that problem. And in this time, in this pandemic and the new normal time, it's even harder, because you have to have a public, you have to have users, and we will see all the consequences of this pandemic on behavior of the people, because even before these times, to engage people and to get people to participate in the processes, because without participation you won't have any kind of intangible heritage regeneration. we will see how all this will affect the process. And also at the beginning, Sandra mentioned for small and medium cities, it's even harder because we will have a lot of space and we just do not have enough citizens. And I don't like word users, but let's say users. So we are struggling with that question.
Thanks, Ilana. Any other comments on resilience, social ecological systems, and heritage?
Yes, well, one of the thing is there. Well, resilience is large as well, but one of the things is creating a sense of belonging and identity. So if we keep the identity that's very specific of the warehouse district and office district, and people identify in Hamburg with this as their values, then they are happy to also spend money and spend time and keep the site alive and keep the whole city alive. So I think it's very important for the city overall, and to have this cultural heritage place very well conserved and preserved as an identity of the city, as being something specific and not exchangeable. We have, of course, in the ARC project more looked on the built heritage part and not on the so how to make the built heritage processes more resilient and more apt to adapt to changes. So it's another view. It's not so much on the society as itself, but more on the processes of how to manage the built heritage.
Okay. We have
Hi, Daniel.
1 minute left.
Just say a couple of words on resilience. Just to echo what Susanna was saying, I think. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to make a very brief comment on resilience, just to echo what Susanna was saying, that the resilience of heritage projects is very dependent on the resilience of the users of the buildings. And certainly at 171-75, as PopRex will hopefully be the end users, the work in the Open Heritage Project is absolutely crucial. And they're very much supporting PopRex on their business plan sites to make them a more resilient and sustainable organisations in the long term. I think it's more difficult to think about resilience on an area-wide basis, area in terms of regeneration terms, particularly at the moment with the difficult economic climate that we're all facing in the decline of high streets. But I think it is quite encouraging now that certainly at Mackey's Corner, one of our other main projects, which has been vacant for over 10 years and is currently under restoration, is that the new owners actually have secured tenants for a range of different types of uses, including creative uses, retail uses, food outlet uses, and other craft-based organisations. So I think that is offering us some encouragement that restored heritage buildings are attractive, or perhaps more attractive to users than other buildings.
Perfect.
Yeah, just to pick up on the last point of Mark, I think that's exactly that the heritage building have become very attractive because they are unique and identifiable. So it's very important to keep them in their original layout. So because they have become more and more attractive for people to work in. In the warehouse district, it's in particular virtual reality and new application or gaming companies that work in there, and they have a good and for them it's a good environment, building environment for their work. I think that's a good point.
Perfect. I think this is a perfect segue also now to go to the presentation from Sandra, who can tell us a bit more about the urban agenda for the EU partnership on culture and cultural heritage and the voices of culture.
Okay, now I have to remember what I have to do. So to take the presentation here, and then here. So, okay, sorry. Ecco, the last one. So, can you hear the map? Is it possible to see the map? Yes? Hopefully. Okay, these are an European partnership. We are more or less 30 members with member states, regions, cities, and especially the European institutions. And this is maybe the major things to say, that these European partnerships are implementing the urban agenda for the EU. So the multi-level governance is the key factor here. It's a voluntary process. There is no, there is a sort of a little call among the member states, but it's not an Horizon 2020. So we are all public authorities from all the various levels working together in order to find out which are the bottlenecks for cities and to create actions to prevent and to smooth the implementation of urban authorities. One other thing important to say here is that we are keep on growing. So we keep on receiving a request from local authorities to become member of this partnership. The last one was from Split this summer. And actually, I think that this is an indicator also of how important is this thematic issue for local authorities, for cities, for urban areas. This is very important. The other partnership are 20 as a maximum number of members. And here this Greek facade represent more or less the approach. So if you want to tackle the cultural and cultural heritage for the urban areas, you have 5 pillars, the 5 thematic issue to address. And then, of course, so this is a thematic sector, 5 thematic sectors, plus the 2 common steps below the pillar, below the column, which are the cross-cutting integrated aspects to take into account the financial sustainabilities and the governance. And all the columns and the steps sustain the tympanum, which is the urban policies for cultural and cultural heritage. And of course, the tympanum has 3 angles, which represents the heritage, the material, could be the built-in heritage and the natural heritage, the landscape, plus the intangible one. So this represents the approach that we used. And actually now, if you Google cultural heritage, this Greek facade appears in Google. So apparently the community find it correctly, I would say. And then now the presentation is focusing on the action that is linked to this panel. So one of the action possible, because we worked with 5 different working groups, and then we merge all the actions gathered from these different sectoral policies, and we created 13 actions. One of these, it's the action number 5, which is specifically dealing with the recreation of heritage out of transformation and adaptive reuse of urban areas. So here the main question was a reconversion for whom? The fact that we were always said also before the gentrification issue. And so the rehabilitation, reconversion through collaborative management, we saw here this morning several examples of the major practice in Europe, but still you are one of the few cities who actually try to, with success, to work on this path. So the action is and will be the objective to create a model, I would say, out of the practices that are fragmented still today. We can see there are several examples to create a sort of model to bring to all the cities in Europe as a sort of open source that everybody can adjust to their own situation. And to create, to smooth these processes also in those small and medium or large cities which are not able to start these processes, so to help them. And this is the main major objective. Then the second objective, if we succeed, if we are given a lawyer from the Technical Secretariat of the European Commission, the other one was also to tackle the bureaucratic problems encountered by local authorities along the path, because this path is not just a problem of engaging different actors, but is also the public procurement or the state aid. So if you want to, in a way, give some priorities to those local communities who are actually working on these specific areas, so then for the public authorities, it's difficult to give them fundings directly. It's a state aid. Even if they are NGOs, they perform economic activities, so you cannot give direct money to one business sector, even if it's a no-profit sector. Or procurement. You want to engage people in a process, and you want that local communities, NGOs working in the area, who knows the place, who knows the people, in a way would be facilitate working there in an official way. The procurement is not given for granted that they are going to win the procurement. So we were thinking, as a second step, this is a major objective, to bring forward even a sort of better regulation where you can have a sort of priority rules or priority opportunities for those cities who would like to start these kind of processes, which means engage the local communities and create collaborative management in order to reach the adaptive reuse of a deprived or abandoned or underused area. So this is the main picture here in the Action 5. Then, of course, this morning we were always also hearing about the practice of Hamburg, and was more related to climate adaptation. We have also action with this resilience topic. And then, of course, the one that Torino said about the tourism management. We have also, Erika said it, we are also working on this action. So in this presentation, I focus on the Action 5 because Action 5 is really something that affects you, all these practices of rehabilitating and reconsidering, reinventing heritage through collaborative processes. And then here, yes, it's the end. But the idea here was to create the opportunity for further exchanges with those who would like to keep on working on these aspects.
Yes,
and contribute.
Thank you, Sandra. How do you think that the cities that are here present today could benefit or could contribute to the partnership?
Actually, here are, Rijeka, Torino, Hamburg, and Sunderland are in different ways, but they are always engaged with these collaborative processes. And so they pass through problems and they succeed in overcoming those challenges that you always encountered on the ground. And actually, this is an experience that's worthwhile to be mentioned at European level, because in this case, the objective of an European partnership implementing the urban agenda is to bring to the Commission and therefore to the Council the bottlenecks and the possible solutions in 3 chapters: better regulation, better funding, better knowledge. Better regulation, this is the Action 5, is to highlight the bureaucratic problems and possible solutions. Then, of course, the first objective, the model, they can contribute in indicating from their own side which could be the community-led local initiative engagement that is worthwhile to be fostered for other cities. So which are the assets to consider? And then, of course, the second one is which are the problems that they managed to overcome. For example, in Sunderland, the fact that they managed to sell the buildings, to have this selling £1, very, I mean, a very small money, but then the ownership of the building was it's an important factor. So I guess that these are, I mean, all the cities that really can contribute effectively to reach the result in this chapter, which is to the council. I would say it's more bureaucratic.
Thank you. I would like now to open the floor also to the audience. In the meanwhile, if the cities also have questions to Sandra, please intervene. I see in particular among the questions that have been collected, one is saying, since the partnerships of the EU urban agenda are not voted by the EU Parliament, what is their legitimacy? To what extent are the actions of the partnership representing the voices of all EU member states?
Actually, it's a great question here. So the urban agenda for the EU, the framework, was created with an intergovernmental process, and it's monitored by an intergovernmental process with all member states plus Norway plus UK is there. It's a big table, I would say, with all member states and the Commission and European Investment Bank and the Community of Regions, plus URBACT and Eurocities. I guess so, yes. And there is others, but it's a big table following the urban affairs. Then, of course, the urban policy remains of competence of member states, but there you discuss what is called the urban acquis communautaire. And these tables made by member states and the Commission created the Amsterdam Pact, which gave the floor to the urban agenda for the EU. And now we are working to the Leipzig Charter, the new Leipzig Charter, because the previous one was arranged by this table in 2007. And now we are working on the Leipzig Charter. Then what? The result. So these agreements signed by all member states, well, the ministries of all member states, it is put to the attention of the Council. So the Council approved, so the European Council approved this document, and the General Secretariat of the Commission received this approval. So it's a quite, I would say, important aspect. Of course, it's starting from the intergovernmental governance. So all member states decided that it's important to actually work together in the urban policy in order not to go alone here and there, and then to create this quite important document approved by the Council and received by the Commission. And then, of course, whenever we work inside, so with these partnerships, there was a call where all cities and all member states were selected according to their own skills and backgrounds and resources. But of course, it's a voluntary exercise. So there was a selection, but not like Horizon 2020 that you have to present so many papers. We are here working in the multi-level governance. So it's a way to, I volunteer because I think I can offer my expertise, my background in this topic specifically. There was a selection, common friendly selection, and then the partnership started through the approval of an informal ministerial meeting. So it's the presidency of the EU who decided to create an informal ministerial meeting. So it's all the ministry getting there to approve the new partnership. And whenever a presidency of the EU wants to really and show you the really important policy that they would like to stress, they are going to organize an informal ministerial meeting. So actually the present German presidency is going to create an informal ministerial meeting the 30th of November to approve the new Leipzig Charter. So all the process to arrive to write this common document where also the cities were involved and creating the framework for the next generation of the urban agenda will be approved by the informal ministerial meeting in Leipzig this 30 November. So it's a big, this is, I'm sorry, it's not urban, but it's more bureaucratic. But this is, I hope I was clear.
Thank you. I think the process is quite complex, but you explained it clearly. If cities would like to be involved now, for example, in Action 5, could this still be possible?
Yes, because actually we are the coordinators. So the coordinators, the action leader of an action has quite, it's an informal process. It's not so bureaucratic. The bureaucracy is to sign and approve the papers. But then, of course, it's voluntary exercise. So the action leader can open the floor to those who are willingness to provide for practices, and of course this is possible. This is always possible because it's really something, a movement around these practices and policies that create a sort of one voice to bring to the Commission.
Okay.
The Council.
Thank you, Sandra. Now I'm having a look at the time. And actually, we are nearly very close to the session, to the closing of the session. So I think I would like to thank everybody for your active contribution, both to attendees and panelists. I think we tackled, I was seeing that in addition to what we started with the introduction and with the topic of the session, we talked about the pandemic and the effects of that on the participation. We talked about gentrification. We had issues on the intangible, on how to create sense of belongings and identity. We had different understandings of resilience that came up. We talked about regulations and bureaucratic issues within also, for example, procurement. So I think we opened up really a discussion. So I really thank you a lot for this. I thank you also the team at the backstage for their technical abilities. So, and I think please keep sharing all your ideas with us, because I think now we started this momentum and we want to keep it rolling. As last thing, I would like to encourage you, and maybe Daniel, you could go on the, yes, to participate, to join this transformation study tour that is starting at 11:30 today. To win a sustainability starter package or a weekend stay for 2 in Mannheim. So, but then thanks again, goodbye, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.